this.
That's always the people who are the most lit. Like the Casanova interview you did, where he's just going super in depth about what it's like robbing liquor stores.
Right.
But he already went to jail for it, so he was able to just be super open about it. That was great.
Yeah, man, it was a dope interview.
Yeah.
Shout out to Casanova.
That was a legendary one. Was that something that you knew about? You knew about that beforehand, and you just wanted to ask about it, or how did you necessarily know about exactly what he went to prison for?
I still am friends with Taxstone.
Right.
I was Taxstone's artist back when Taxstone was out.
So you just know.
And so me and Taxstone kind of had a conversation. It's like, hey, give me a little bit of background about the dude, and he told me. And at the end of the day, if he didn't want to talk about it, we would have went on to the next question. But he served his time. He wanted to talk about it. The interview got millions of views. I think it helped him out in terms of his perception overall. And it was a dope interview, dope artist.
Oh, that was dope. When did you start to feel like you really started to get a lot of negative feedback, when that became an element? Because there is a certain percentage of fans out there, hip hop fans, who really feel like DJ Vlad is a fed or just overall a bad guy. When did that start to brew, and how have you always made sense of it?
I think kind of from day one to a certain degree, because I came into it not following the hip hop interview blueprint. You know what I mean? Like all the people that I was listening to, they all did these softball kind of interviews. I ended up I directed an episode of American Gangster, actually on Mac Dre and the Romper Room Gang. So I got to sort of put together this kind of a mini documentary on this artist with a serious criminal element to it. And it was such a dope piece when it came out that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take what I did with American Gangster and I'm gonna apply it to my own platform. So there was always that element. And I kind of, felt like, well, look, if you got these gangster rappers who talk about the shit in their songs, let's talk about it, in interviews, which really nobody in the hip hop media really ever did. Like I said, everyone was either too scared, or they wanted to be the artist's friend, or they just that wasn't what they wanted to do.
When you go back and look at XXL and The Source and shit before the internet came around, it's so obvious that the labels were governing how this shit came out.
Yeah, so it was sort of like, I looked at this and I'm like, a lot of this shit is just lame. Like it's a bunch of, this wouldn't fly in the real media journalism world.
Right.
Like the LA Times wouldn't be doing interviews like this. 60 Minutes or 2020 would not be, or Oprah wouldn't be doing these types of interviews. But yet with hip hop, this is all they fucking do. So I'm like, fuck this. Like I'm gonna really do this like how the big boys are doing it, how the CNNs and everything are doing it, and that automatically created a backlash from day one. But I'm like, all right, backlash it is. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the numbers speak for themselves. So I don't really care what an average person behind a keyboard has to say about what I do. Like, unless you're part of my company, your opinion really just doesn't matter. It's really about, is this reacting? Is this creating a dialogue? Is it getting the views? Is it making an impact? And if I'm the bad guy in the process, okay, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to take. I'm not trying to be I'm behind the camera anyway, so I'm not here to try to be as popular as possible. That's not my goal. My goal is to build a business and create incredible content.
Right. But I mean, is there anything that really gets on your skin that people say about you, or is it just easy to brush it off? Because most of it is not really too grounded in reality. When they say you're a cop or whatever, it's kind of like there's no use to argue with it because they're just fucking around. They couldn't possibly be being serious. Right.
I mean, you could check the paperwork. You know what I mean? Like, by the time this interview drops, I think, I just did an interview with Michael Franzese, who was the highest ranking mafia member, from a major crime family, from the Colombo family that, he was a capo who walked away. And in the interview, he talked about doing business with Al Sharpton, and how I guess there was a drug deal that Al got caught up in, and he ended up turning into an FBI informant who wore a wire.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And Al Sharpton even addressed this publicly. he said,
He
yes,
previously spoke on it.
Yeah, I wore a wire because I was protecting my community. He spun it whatever way.
Right.
But people call me a Fed. And they love Al Sharpton.
Right.
But Al Sharpton was wearing a wire.
Right.
And getting people busted, allegedly, I guess. You know what I mean? Cooperating with the actual FBI and wearing a wire. But y'all love Al Sharpton, but y'all hate me. Like, all right.
Right.
That's how you want to do it. It is what it is.
Yeah. But so...
Yeah, I mean, no, the shit doesn't bother me, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, like, we sign up for this.
Do you have a policy in regards to how you will get into an argument with somebody who's talking shit about you? Because you said to me previously that you just won't respond to anybody when they're going in on you. But then if it's a public figure, I noticed that you had like a recent thing with Vince Staples, for instance. You actually responded to him, but I mean, he's been on your platform. He's a big name.
Yeah. That was maybe like about a year or two ago. Not super recent. Yeah, I mean, I think with that, I actually kind of started it.
You did start it, yeah. You said Vince won't do the interview.
Well, because I did an interview with Vince a long time ago, and it was done remotely at the time. Like we weren't in the same room, but it was me who did the interview with him. And people would just hit me sometimes and be like, "Yo, how come bring Vince back?" And I'm like, "Well, I think Vince is mad at me." And then he responded. He's like, "Well, why'd you think I'm mad at you?" And I'm like, "Well." And then we kind of started, it wasn't like a beef back and forth. It was actually a real lighthearted conversation where I'm like, yo, listen, I'm a fan. Like,
But he's somebody who used to just use the media to build himself up. And then you've seen his like new approach is to just, like his new album, I think he only did Big Boy, who was actually on the album, but he only did one interview. So it's like kind of interesting, like for somebody like his perspective, that he could use the media to get a shitload of headlines, but also sort of have his story written by the media to a certain extent because he's, allowing them to sort of govern the conversation about it.
I mean, look, a lot of artists get to a certain point. I mean, usually the bigger artist gets, a lot of times they do less interviews.
Now that's like the precedent. The bigger the artist is, the less media that they do. If they get really big, they're no interviews or one with Zane Lowe every year.
Yeah, right.
That kind of thing.
How many Jay-Z or Drake interviews do you see?
Right.
Not that many.
And they typily own the platform that it's coming out on.
Yeah,
now.
like Jay did it on Tidal.
Right, which is much respect because that's some smart shit right there,
Yeah, man. But yeah, I mean, people, you can't really take this shit personally because it's like, in the same way that, for example, sometimes an artist, they're coming up and they ask us for an interview and we don't say yes, and they get to a certain point and then we'll ask them for an interview. It's like, well, you fronted on us when I had 1,000 followers. And it's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, nobody gave a shit about you back then.
I did front on you.
Yeah.
And there's artists that look at our platform and say, well, this is not big enough for me to do. Like Vlad TV, like I'd rather go do Good Morning America because it's a bigger platform. So I can't have my feelings hurt over that. So it's all, I used to interview French Montana all the time when he was an underground artist. And he got to a certain point and he's messing with the Kardashians and he doesn't feel he needs to do Vlad TV interviews anymore. And that's fine. It's cool.
Somebody like him, do you still have your team send out a request every once in a while, just see if they're, because presumably in French Montana's career, there'll be a downswing, and at some point he'll be like, well, shit, maybe I do need the Vlad TV interview.
Maybe, or maybe not.
But do you have your team still like reach out to people on a regular basis, or? It
depends. If they're going on a promo run, because we kind of monitor what interviews people are doing with other platforms, yours included, and so we'll reach out. And a lot of times the bigger artists, we don't get a yes. But, a lot of our business these days is kind of formed around our, what I call a regular guest. So like, for example, Nick Cannon, Boosie, Godfrey, Dion Cole,
Lord Jamar,
Trey D, BG Knockout, John Sally, China Mac.
You do have a nice repertoire there.
A big group, and I know I'm forgetting one or two, and they're going to kill me like when they see this. But Freeway Ricky Ross, once again, like a lot of these people who D.L. Hughley, a bunch of people who I think are just incredible people who just come back every couple months, and we'll just chop it up again. and that's really what a lot of the business is based off of. So if we could get like a number one artist who's on a promo tour, great. We got Lil Yachty last time, great. But if we never get Lil Yachty again, we'll be fine.
Yeah, that's kind of been something I've dealt with the podcast, is like realizing that you don't want to be 100% reliant on your ability to get the hot new artists, because you need to have like a backbone to the business for the time periods that you aren't able to get the crazy ass interviews that you want to get.
Right.
Yeah. Is there what goes into picking your guests? Because some of the people that you see, like when you're saying the mob boss guy, I'm sitting there looking at my YouTube subscriptions. I'm like, wow, that's a great idea to interview that guy. That would have never fucking occurred to me. Mm-hmm. What's that process like?
I mean, it's never the same every time. Like I said, sometimes it's okay. Who are what are our competitors? Who are they interviewing? Mm-hmm. And
but somebody like him seems sort of out of left field.
Sometimes he was on a platform called Valuetainment.
Okay.
And it was got like 6 million views or something.
Oh, I think
so
I did
I'm like,
see that working.
Well, if it got 6 million views with these guys, we might be able to do more than that.
Bring them over to a different audience.
And it's even though we don't usually interview white Italian guys, he's a gangster on a similar level to some of the people we've interviewed. Mm-hmm. So it's like, this could work. And we just run with it. Sometimes people pitch us. We constantly have emails every day with people pitching us. Sometimes it'll just be me watching TV and say, what about this guy?
Right.
If there's if there's some sort of like, for example, Surviving R. Kelly came out, so we got public announcement. R. Kelly's first group. Then we got Lisa Van Allen, who was part of Surviving R. Kelly, and what I mean. It's like sometimes you just got to look to see where things are heading and see what angle you could choose off of, where the energy is.
Right. How many people would you say you have on your team that are really making this thing happen? Because you it's not just you.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people probably think it's just you.
Nah, definitely not. There's around 10 people. I mean, I have a whole big office/studio in Manhattan.
Okay.
In Midtown. Like if you see that big giant red couch, and some of the pictures I put up, like that's my studio. Like my whole video editing team is there. Part of my writing team is there. But I also have, an assistant. I have, writers that work remotely. I have a bunch of kind of regular contractors in terms of cameramen that I use. 10 full-time people, probably about 15 altogether in terms of regular contractors. If you include those.